Mollusks are a diverse group of invertebrates that include snails, clams, and squids. They play a crucial role in the ecosystem. They have different characteristics, different classes, and economic significance. So let us discover the diverse group of soft-bodied invertebrates. I am Irish L. Alalag, your reporter for today. Good morning. So here is our presentation outline. So we will be tackling about the evolutionary perspective, molluscan characteristics, and different classes of mollusks, and their reproduction and other maintenance functions. So what are mollusks? Mollusks are a diverse group of invertebrates, meaning they have no backbones, unlike us that have backbones and other animals. So this includes invertebrates include snails, clams, and squids. So they play crucial roles in ecosystems and have economic and cultural significance, needing pearls for jewelry. And also the shell itself is used for jewelry. So they are soft-bodied animals with a muscular foot that are often covered in hard shell. So here are the members of phylum Mollusca. It includes barnacles, snails, squid, oysters, scallop, octopus, slug, and many more. They are either univalve, which means they have one shell, bivalves, which means they have two shells, or others have no shell at all. Now let's move on to the ecology and habitat of mollusks. They are adaptive to different environments. They evolved various adaptations to survive in different habitats, including freshwater, marine, and terrestrial environments. They are also important in ecosystems as they have vital roles such as filter feeders, decomposers, and they are prey species that provide food to a wide array of other taxa. Conservation and threats to mollusks. So the threats are human activities, pollution, and habitat destruction. Due to these threats, we should conserve mollusks by increasing our knowledge of their distribution and taxonomy. We should also address the impact of the past, ongoing, and newly emerging threats. So, for the evolutionary perspective of mollusks, all cephalopods are part of this, including most adept predators of the invertebrate world. Cephalopods include squids, octopus, cuttlefish, and others. So, class Cephalopoda has approximately 9,000 species then. However, they only have 700 species now. Numerically, mollusks are twice as successful as vertebrates. And there are nearly 100,000 species. In these 100,000 species, 22,000 species are found in the Philippines, according to PBCPP in 2002. So most mollusks belong to the two classes, which are the Bivalvia and Gastropoda. We have a pie graph which have the proportion of major species from inland capture fisheries production in the Philippines, year 2015. Second picture with samples of cephalopods. Mollusks range in size and body form. And in my research, the largest mollusk is the colossal squid, which measures nearly 43 feet long. And the smallest that I have researched is the Angustopila dominicae that measures 0.86 millimeters. Mollusks have body of two parts. These are the head to foot, which includes the feeding, cephalic sensory, and locomotor organs. And next is the visceral mass, which includes the digestive, respiratory, circulatory, and reproductive organ. We have the mantle that secretes a calcareous shell and covers the visceral mass. Next is the mantle cavity, where excretion, gas exchange, elimination of digestive wastes, and release of reproductive products occur. So, mollusks have bilateral artery which means that the left and right side of their body are mirror to one another. So next part is the radula, which is used in scraping food. All mollusks have open circulatory system except for the cephalopoda. So here we can see the other of a mollusk. So here is the radula, which is used for scraping food. Here we have the trophophore larva, which is the free swimming stage of the mollusks. The other picture shows the spiral cleavage of the mollusks, shows the early stages of mollusks and the division of cells unequally and at an angle to the vertical and horizontal axis. So next we have the schistoscilum formation. It's a process by which some animal embryos develop. It all begins in the gastrula stage with the presence of blastophore. Then later on, mesoderm splits, forming xylem, which will later on form into a trophophore larva, oblastic. So it means that they develop three germ layers during the embryonic stage. These layers are ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm. And also, as I mentioned earlier, most of the mollusks have open circulatory system, means that blood is not contained entirely in enclosed blood vessels. So blood are being pumped into a cavity with no channels directing its flow. The parts of a bivalve mollusk. It has nacreous layer, which is the innermost layer of the shell. This layer is shiny. Next is the prismatic layer, which is the middle layer of the shell containing calcite or aragonite. So next is the periostracum, which is the thin outermost layer of the shell, which is skin-like part of the shell. So next is the shell gland, the muscle, the adductor muscle that open and closes the shell. Anta, which is the organ that forms the shell and adds to the shell to increase its size and strength as it grows. This photo shows the radular apparatus, which lies over the cartilaginous odontophore. So the muscles attached to the radula move the radula back and forth over the odontophore.
So, before we proceed to the next part of our presentation, I am Kiara Tikgungan and I will be talking about the largest and most diverse class under the phylum Mollusca, which is the class Gastropoda. In 1975, Georges Cuvier coined the term gasteropods to describe gastropods. So the term gastropod itself came from the Greek words gaster, which means gut or stomach, and pous, which means foot, because of the placement or position of the animal's foot below its gut. Just like what I said earlier, class Gastropoda constitutes the most diverse class of the phylum Mollusca, with about 75,000 species of marine and freshwater snails worldwide. Gastropods are soft-bodied, non-segmented invertebrates with the body composed of three regions: the head, foot, and visceral mass. So, gastropods are unsegmented invertebrates because they lack a clear division of their bodies into repeated segments or units. Rather, they typically exhibit a more continuous body structure. Torsion. Torsion is a characteristic feature or phenomenon in most gastropods observed in the free-swimming larva that transforms the initially symmetrical larva into an asymmetrical adult. This rotation strategically places the gills, anus, and openings from the excretory and reproductive systems just behind the head and nerve cords, also twisting the digestive tract into a U shape. So, torsion is a distinctive feature in the development of gastropods among all other class under the phylum Mollusca, wherein during their growth, their body undergoes this 180-degree rotation in a counterclockwise direction, turning some of their organs like the stomach and intestine to a different position or orientation. So there are three speculative advantages of torsion. First, without torsion, withdrawal into the shell would proceed with the foot entering first and the more vulnerable head entering last. So with the help of torsion, the head enters the shell first, minimizing the risk of exposure of the head to potential predators. Second, torsion allows clean water from in front of the snail to enter through the anterior opening of the mantle cavity, so rather than water which is contaminated with silt that is stirred by the snail's crawling across its substrate, clean water will enter into the mantle cavity, which is an advantage for the snail. And third, due to the twist in the mantle's sensory organs around to the head region, this makes the snail more sensitive to stimuli coming from the direction in which it moves, which is advantageous in detecting and avoiding predators. Moving on to the gastropod shells. The aperture is the opening of the shell which defines the ventral surface. The opposite side or top is the dorsal surface. Because gastropod shells grow by coiling about an axis, parts of the shell that were once ventral eventually becomes oriented dorsally as new shell material is deposited at the edge of older material. The anterior side of the shell is the front end, which is located near the head, so the snail crawls in that direction. The posterior side of the shell usually bears the coiled structure of the shell or spire. So the spire refers to the elevated or coiled portion of the shell that spiral upwards, which represents the part of the shell where new whorls are added as the gastropod grows. Moving on, class Gastropoda is composed of the snails, limpets, and slugs. A snail is a gastropod that is characterized by its spiral shell. They can be found in a variety of environments, including terrestrial, freshwater, and marine habitats. Limpet has a shallowly conical or dome-like shell and a broad muscular foot that it uses to cling to its substrate. They are primarily marine and often found in intertidal zones attached to rocks. So a slug has no apparent shell. They are essentially snails without a prominent external protective structure that can be found in gardens, forests, and other moist environments. Locomotion. Gastropods have a muscular foot which is used for creeping locomotion in most species. In some, it is modified for swimming or burrowing. So most gastropods have a well-developed head that includes eyes, 1 to 2 pairs of tentacles, and a concentration of nervous tissues, which is called the ganglion. For many gastropods, the power for locomotion is provided by muscular waves moving along the ventral surface of the foot. The first of these waves being coupled to the substratum by a thin layer of pedal mucus. So, pedal mucus acts as a glue, allowing the animal to adhere to the substratum on which it crawls. This adhesive ability is advantageous, particularly to animals which live in intertidal or arboreal habitats, where the forces of waves and gravity must be resisted while the animal forages. So, the smallest gastropods use cilia, which are hair-like structures on the surface of cells that beat in coordinated waves that helps gastropod to glide or crawl over surfaces. Larger gastropods, on the other hand, use waves of muscular contraction, known as peristalsis, which generate a wave-like motion and facilitates their movement through surfaces.
Feeding and digestion. Most mollusks have a specialized feeding structure found in their mouths called radula. It's a ribbon-like structure covered with tiny backward-facing teeth used to scrape or rasp food particles. Yung radula, it is a rough tongue with a hundred of teeth na naka-attach dito. Ginagamit din nila ito para mag-scrape ng mga pagkain nila. Mollusks can be herbivores or scavengers. Herbivores means they're only eating plants. At yung scavengers naman, ito yung mga patay o nabubulok na labi ng ibang hayop o halaman na kinakain din nila. So, sa digestive system naman, gastropods intake their food through their mouth first. The snail take their food and brings it through the radula where the snail's jaw hold the food in place while it's happening. It goes through the esophagus and it's transported to the crop and then to the stomach. The food will then pass through the intestine wherein the indigestible part of the snail food is open to the anus. So, as you can see dun sa picture, parang tayo ring mga tao, nag-start yung digestive system natin sa mouth. Then, magta-travel sa esophagus and magta-transport sa crop and stomach. The crop function as a temporary storage organ. It allows gastropod to regulate their food intake and gradually process the stored food before it progresses to the next stage of digestion. Stomach, dito naman nag-undergo yung chemical digestion. Following the digestion and nutrient extraction, the absorbed nutrients traverse through the intestine for further processing and absorption. Then, the indigestible part of the snail's food is open to the anus. So, let's proceed to the reproduction and development. How do gastropods reproduce? They typically reproduce sexually. They are dioecious, meaning individuals are either male or female. Do snails reproduce easily? Snails reproduce quickly in good water condition. A stable environment encourages mating and the laying of the egg. Adequate water quality support the development of snail eggs and the survival of young snails. Kumbaga kung magmi-mate sila is dapat maganda yung water condition dahil nakapag-reproduce sila ng mabilis kung maganda yung place na pagmimitan nila. What happened after snails mate? The female lays jelly-like eggs. Kumbaga dun sa mga vesicle, example ng snail, nakakapag yung egg nila is naka-attach dun sa may stem ng plants. Yung kulay pink na bilog-bilog, yun yung mga egg ng vesicle. Then, na-hatch sila within 2 to 4 weeks. How long does snail takes to mate? The mating process can be vary in duration depending on the species and specific behaviors involved.
Other maintenance function. Primitive gastropods has 6 ganglia located in the head, foot, and visceral mass. Mga primitive gastropods daw ay may 6 na ganglia na naka-attach sa ulo at paa ng visceral mass. The evolution of gastropods' nervous system has resulted in untwisting of nerves and the concentration of nervous tissues into fewer, larger ganglia. Gastropods have well-developed sensory structure, includes eye, statocyst, and ostradia. Statocyst at ostradia, ito ang mga bahagi ng katawan na tumutulong sa kanila sa pagkikipag-ugnay sa kanilang kapaligiran at pagtuklas sa kanilang paligid. So, dito naman tayo sa Nereida. Primitive gastropods possess 2 Nereida which have disappeared and modern species. Ang mga Nereida daw ay mga organic na naglilinis ng dumi at nagpapanatili ng karampatang balanse sa likod sa katawan ng gastropods. The Nereida modifies excretory ways the selective absorbing certain ions and organic molecules. Parehas din ito sa Neridia na may mga organism din na naglilinis at nagpapanatiling balanse ang likido sa kanilang katawan. Aquatic gastropods species excrete ammonia while terrestrial snails convert ammonia to less toxic form uric acid. Aquatic gastropods and terrestrial snail, they have different diets because land animals can get energy needed to make urea and uric acid. Land animals can afford the energy needed to make ammonia. Fish need to get rid of ammonia, but land animals need it to live. Auspridea are sensory organs found in some gastropods, particularly those in the subclass Prosobranchia. Function as a chemoreceptor and is involved in the direct detection of waterborne chemicals, including those related to the chemical composition of the environment. Ang Auspridea ay matatagpuan sa ilang gastropods, lalo na sa subclass Prosobranchia. Ito ay may mga importanteng sensory organs sa kanilang katawan na nakakatulong ito na parang defense mechanism sa kanilang katawan para makaiwas sila sa mga panganib o sa mga predator na pwede silang kainin.
Class Bivalvia under phylum Molluscan. Bivalves are characterized by having two parts, hinge shell that is usually made of calcium carbonate, which protect the soft-bodied animals inside and can close tightly for protection, which close 15 species. Latin bis, which means twice, valva, which means leaf. The second largest molluscan class includes clam, oyster, mussels, and scallops. Many bivalves are edible and some pearls. Example of edibles bivalves is scallops, mussels, and others. Most bivalves are filter feeders, hence they are valuable in removing bacteria, microorganisms from polluted water. Filter feeders means filter feeders is an animals that obtain its food by filtering from a current of water that passes through some part of its system. Shell and associated structures of class bivalves. Two convex halves of the shell are called valves. The part of the shell is umbu, the oldest part of the shell, which is a swallowen area that near the shell anterior margin. Teeth are proteinaceous and a series of tongue and groove modification the dorsal margin of the shell that are prevent the valves from twisting. Although bivalves appear to have two shells embryologically, the shells form a single structure.
Gas exchange of bivalves. Bivalve adaptations to sedentary filter feeding lifestyles include the loss of the head and radula and the expansions of cilia-covered gills. Gills form folded sheets with one end attached to the foot and the other end attached to the mantle. The mantle cavity, ventral to the gills, is the inhalant region, and the cavity dorsal to the gills is the exhalant region. Cilia move after into the mantle cavity through an incurrent opening of the mantle. A bivalve buried in the substance can extend its siphon to the surface and still feed and exchange gases. Moving through water tubes, blood and water are in close proximity and gases exchanged by diffusion. Water exits the bivalve through the suprabranchial chamber and through an excurrent opening in the mantle. Gas exchange. As water flows over the gills, oxygen dissolved in the water diffuses across the thin gill membranes into bivalve's bloodstream. At the same time, carbon dioxide from the bivalve's metabolism diffuses out into the water. Feeding and digestion. Food particles are trapped in the mantle cavity, where cilia move them along food grooves toward the mouth. Leaf-like labial pulps aid in sorting particles, and cilia transport them into the mouth or toward the edges of the pulps and gills. Rejected material, pseudophysis, is transported by a ciliary tract on the mantle. The digestive system process involves an esophagus with a mucoid food string rotated by cilia, leading to the stomach and the crystalline style. Enzymes for digestion are incorporated into the style, and cilia assist in breaking down food particles. Undigested waste are carried back to the stomach, and then the intestine. Fecal matter is expelled through the anus near the excurrent opening, with current water carrying it away. As water passes over the gills, suspended food particles such as phytoplankton, bacteria, and detritus entrapped by mucus on the gills. Cilia on the gills then move these trapped particles toward the mouth. In digestion, once food particles reach the mouth, they enter the stomach, where initial digestion begins. From the stomach, partially digested food moves into the digestive gland. Other maintenance and functions. Bivalves feature an open circulatory system where blood travels from the heart to tissue cyanosis, nephridia, gills, and back to the heart. Oxygenation occurs not only in the gills but also in the mantle. Some bivalves have a separate aorta supplying blood directly to the mantle. Two nephridia are positioned below the pericardial cavity, connecting to the coelom and opening the nephridiospores in the anterior suprabranchial chamber. The nervous system comprises three pairs interconnected ganglia associated with the esophagus, foot, and posterior adductor muscle. Additional receptors include statocytes near the pedal ganglion and an ospardum in the mantle beneath the posterior adductor muscle. Reproduction and development. Bivalves generally exhibit dioecious reproduction, although some are monoecious, with the species being protandric. Gonad surrounds the loop intestine in the visceral mass, and their ducts open to the mantle cavity or nephridiopore. Development involves trochopore and veliger stages, with settle leading to the adult form. Most freshwater bivalves brood their young with fertilization in the mantle cavity. Some brood in maternal gills through reduced trochopore and veliger stages, while others release young calms or brood to a modified veliger stage called a glossidium. Reproduction. Most bivalves release eggs and sperm into water. Fertilization typically occurs externally when sperm encounter eggs in the water column. In some species, fertilization occurs inside the female's body after male releases sperm into her. This is less common than external fertilization in bivalves.
Bivalve diversity. A bivalve is characterized by possessing two shells secreted by a mantle that extend in a sheet on either side of the body. The, sh- the two shells are joined at the dorsal end by a region called the ligament. The ligament is comprised of the tensilium and rhizolium. Giant clam, or Tridacnagidas, is one of two genera and 9 species of giant clams. Giant clams occur in association with coral reefs throughout the tropical Indo-Pacific region. Giant clams are unusual in that they are derive a substantial portion of their nutrition from a relationship with photosynthetic symbiotic algae or zooxanthellae that live in their large, fleshy mantle. Class Cephalopoda. A cephalopod is an animal belonging to the group of Cephalopoda, containing octopus, seaweed, cuttlefish, and king. The word cephalopod is derived from Greek that means head foot, which perfectly describes animals that have eyes just above their many limbs. Cephalopods are characterized by a completely merged head and foot, with a ring of arms or tentacles surrounding the head. Cephalopod shells. Cephalopod shells came in various beautiful shapes like straight, curved, crescent, or coiled. These shells are usually tube-shaped or cone-shaped, with dividers called septa, which create chambers inside. The septa intersect the shells at sutures, creating patterns on the outside, useful identification. The body chamber where the animal lives doesn't have sutures. The small tube called the siphuncle runs through the shell, containing liquid to help the animal stay buoyant in the water.
Ang sepal ay naglalaman ng likido na tumutulong sa pananatili ng buoyancy ng hayop sa tubig, tulad ng kanilang mga kamag-anak na clam at snail. Ang mga cephalopod ay nagtataglay ng mga tinikal na katangian ng molluskan, isang shell, isang muscular foot, at isang mantle. Motion. As predators, cephalopods depend on their ability to move quickly using a jet propulsion system. The mantle of cephalopods contains radial and circular muscles. Man ay isang cephalopods na lumilibot sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng iba't ibang pamamaraan. Sa pangkalahatan, gumagamit sila ng jet propulsion, pinupuno ng malakas na kalamnan ang mantle na naglalabas ng tubig mula sa cavity ng mantle. Sa pamamagitan ng funnel ay tinutulak ang direction. Flying squid have been clocked a speed of 30 kilometers per hour. Octopus are more sedentary animals. They may use jet propulsion in an escape response, but normally they crawl over the substance using the tentacles. Ito ay habang nasa himpapawid, ang mga pusit ay kadalasang nag-eject air ng ilang beses at pinapakpak din ang kanilang mga palikpik upang patuloy na gumagalaw. Pinapaypay nila ang mga kanilang mga braso at galamay ng isang postura na tumutulong sa panatiling nasa hangin. Feeding and digestion. Cephalopods like octopus and squids use their keen eyesight and suction cup-equipped arm to find and grab prey. Ito ay ang mga octopus appendage ay tinuturing ng mga armas, hindi galamay at palagi itong natatakpan ng mga suckers. Mga bahagi parang suction cup ay nakakabit sa mga bagay. Ang 10 appendage ng pusit ay hindi pare-pareho. 8 sa kanila ay may mga armas, depende sa mga species. They all have jaws and a radula, a tongue-like structure to tear and guide food into their mouths. Ito ay kasamang mga struktura ng bibig ng maraming mollusks, ang isang espesyal na inaangkop na malaras na dila tinatawag na radula. Their stomach and a big cecum do most of the digestion through muscular movement with digestive glands providing enzymes. The squid stomach is a small, shiny white sac that connects to the stomach pouch of secret. Digestion of food begins in the stomach. The cecum also performs some digestion and is the primary site of absorption of nutrients. Enzymes from liver and pancreas help digestion. Waste is expelled through the anus via water excepting the mantle cavity. Force water through a tubular septum. The hypomum and this propels the animals very rapidly through the water. Reproductive and development. The oocysts with gonads in the visceral mass located in the dorsal portion of cephalopods. Male reproductive tract consists of testes and structure for encasing spermatophores. Male cephalopods have the oocyst reproductive system that includes testes and structures for encasing spermatophores. The gonads are located in the visceral mass, which is situated in the dorsal region of the animals. One tentacles of the male cephalopods called hectacles is modified for spermatophore transfer. During copulation, male and female tentacles intertwine and the male removes spermatophores from this mantle cavity and place them in the female. Ang hectacolius, isang galamay sa mga lalaking cephalopods, ay binago upang mapadali ang paglipat ng mga spermatophores. Ang mga galamay ng lalaki at babae ay nagsasama sa panahon ng pagsasama at ang lalaki ay naglilipat ng mga spermatophores. Force water through a tubular septum. The hypomum and this propels the animals very rapidly through the water.
Class Polyplacapora. Polyplacapora. Member of the class Polyplacapora are the chitons. They have a muscular foot for attachment to solid substrates in a shell consisting of 8 overlapping dorsal plates known as valves. Most chitons are marine and can be found in intertidal zones clinging to rocks and hard surfaces. Chitons are herbivores, primarily grazing on algae and detritus using them. Reproduction of Polyplacapora. Chitons are the usus, meaning they have separate male and female individuals to reproduce. They release eggs and sperm into the water, where external fertilization occurs. Some species of chitons have separate sexes, while others are hermaphroditic, possessing both male and female reproductive organs. Development of Polyplacapora. After fertilization, the eggs develop into larvae known as trochophores. These larvae are planktonic and drift in ocean currents for some time. Eventually, the trochophores develop into a more advanced larval stage called the villager. Villagers have shells and ciliated bands that help them swim and feed. As villagers continue to grow, they undergo metamorphosis and settle on the ocean floor. At this stage, they undergo a process called torsion, where the body twists and the shell twists into characteristic shapes seen in adult chitons.
Solenogastras, also known as animal with a furrowed belly. Solenogastras. Solen means channel, then gaster means gut. Animals with a furrowed belly associated with coral, where they feed on coral polyps and nidarian polyps. Lack a shell and muscular foot modified in the ventral pedal groove. So what is the pedal groove? It is a longitudinal fold or folds with ciliated and secretory cells in the median ventral position. Approximately 250 species. Some has lost secondary radula. So what is radula? Anatomical structure used by mollusks for feeding. Para siyang tang ng tao na ginagamit para mag-strip or humiwa ng pagkain. So basically, Solenogastras has no radula. Then, they are surface dwellers on corals and other marine substrates. Are carnivorous, monoecious, and instead of a shell, their bodies are covered with minute ended calcareous spicules. So what is monoecious? Monoecious means having both the male and female reproductive organs in the same individuals. Calcareous spicules, composed of calcium carbonate in crystalline forms. Itong calcareous spicules na to is yung mga tusok-tusok, which is kung nakinig kayo sa group 1, na-discuss na din nila ito dun sa mga sponges. Then additional information, Solenogastras are hermaphrodites, which change their sex during their life. Younger specimens lives as a male, while the older one lives as a female.